Welcome to the fifth Fave 5 podcast. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by a special guest, Ari Hest, a singer, songwriter, producer that I've actually been a fan of for a long time. I first heard about Ari when we were on the inaugural Keamo Music Cruise, which was in 2008. And I had not heard about him previously, but a woman that I met on that cruise who became a good friend, Robin Miller, said that she had checked out all the artists that were going to be on board, and that the one that she made sure that we go see was Ari Hest. So I said, all right, I'll check him out. I ended up going to all of his sets, and Robin was right. He was great, became a fan. And a year later, in 2009, I took my daughter Tracy with me to the Ark in Ann Arbor to see Ari at a co-bill with Ellis Paul. And after that, Tracy, my daughter, was totally enamored and went and bought 3 CDs and became a big fan ever since. And since then, I've seen Artie so many times, I've lost track of the number of times, but I think I've seen you in at least 8 different venues. I've seen you in New York and in California and a lot of different places in Michigan. And it's really been great following your career. So, Ari Hess, welcome to the podcast.
I thank you so much, Stan. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming to all those shows.
You know, it's been interesting because we've seen you in the western part of the state in Grand Haven, in a venue that's no longer open there, Seven Steps Up. We've seen you here in Ann Arbor. We've seen you in Lake Orion. We've seen you in Jackson. So it's been a pleasure to see you. And we've actually hosted you in our home. We'll talk a bit more about that. But let me start out by asking you some questions about your background. First of all, when and where were you born?
I was born in New York City in 1979.
And where have you lived since then?
Well, we, uh, I think, I was when I was born, my parents were already living in Riverdale, New York, which is just outside of Manhattan. Um, and they had just sold an apartment that they had on the Upper West Side of New York that they sold for like $40,000. That's now worth, 3 million or something like that, and moved to a more suburban part of, it's maybe as suburban as it gets for New York City. It's still part of the city technically, but it's on the outskirts.
What borough is that in?
It's in the Bronx. Technically, it's in the
Okay.
Bronx.
Okay. All right. So after New York, where else have you lived?
So I have lived in, New Jersey. I lived in Jersey City, but that was a little more recent. I lived in Las Vegas for 6 months because my girlfriend, or my wife, then girlfriend, was working out there, so we moved out there for a little while. Um, I have lived in every borough except for Staten Island, every borough of New York. And I would say most of my adult life I was in Brooklyn. And after I got married, we moved to Massachusetts, which is where my wife is from. So we're up here now.
Have you ever been tempted to move anywhere else, like Nashville or LA? Or
I have been tempted to move elsewhere. I wouldn't put those two at the top of the list, though. Even though they're certainly music capitals of the country. Um, I kind of thought about that after seeing the country so many times on the road, and started envisioning myself in one city or another. And they tended to be places that were cooler climates, that also were a little more around nature. So the Northwest, there was a time when I was single that I was close to making the move to Seattle. Um, and I like Portland as well. Denver. Those are cities that caught my attention a little more than some of the other maybe bigger names.
when you were growing up, who was in your family, both your immediate and any extended family that were around?
My brother. I have a older brother. He's 4 years older than me. We shared a bedroom all of our youth, and my parents, when I was about 8, they split up, but they lived very close to each other. So I would just trade off nights in different houses, or apartments rather. And so would my brother, and so it was three people in a household, I guess you would say, depending on which day.
And did you have any other extended family around?
Yeah, most of my extended family was in New York, and we would see them for mostly for holidays. As I think I think it's most people would also say that there's some people in your extended family you're tighter with than others. So I saw some of them more than others, but New York and New Jersey, most of my extended family.
So you had grandparents and uncles and aunts. Like,
I had an uncle in New York whose son and daughter actually went to the same school that I went to. So I was, I guess, a little more tight with them than some other ones. Um, and the rest of my parents' siblings were kind of scattered around, some in different states, so I didn't see them as often.
what did your parents do?
So my when I was born, my mother was not working all that much, but she was occasionally being hired as a birthday party singer for kids. So she would just go with her guitar and play for I don't know how many kids. But my dad at the beginning was also in music, but had a fairly steady at the time job as a jingle writer. He worked in a studio in New York and worked on a lot of jingles that a few years after I was born, I actually wound up singing on a couple of them. So that's what they were doing at the beginning. And then I think, maybe by the time I was early teenager, that had morphed into my mother becoming a cantor, which she went to school for, and my father no longer really in the jingle business, more of a freelance musician, whether it's writing for different kinds of bands or arranging for different bands, as well as being hired for gigs as a sax player. So that was what they were doing for most of my youth. And then my father eventually became a music teacher at a college called Queensborough Community College, and he was out there, for a long time. And my mother continued to be a cantor up until a few years ago.
So your mom played the guitar and your dad played the sax. Did they play any other instruments?
My mother played a little guitar, and had one around the house, which is kind of, I guess we'll get to this, but that's, yeah, I picked up her guitar at the beginning. My father could play, yeah, a sax was his main instrument, but he could play, a keyboard pretty well. And I suppose, there weren't a lot of other instruments that they were playing. But they wanted me to learn piano first. So that's what, when I was really young, I took some piano lessons, and that was the beginning of my musical education, I guess.
So when you were in elementary school and middle school and high school, what did you like to do? What were some of your things that you followed?
I was a sports junkie. I wore, baseball and football jerseys to school, and I think my popularity throughout, I would say, elementary and junior, and maybe some of high school too, was largely connected with my athleticism, because I was a fairly quiet kid. So, I wanted to play ball. I was a pretty good student, not amazing, but pretty good. Particularly in math, I was good. And yeah, I just surrounded myself with sports. I at the end of the school day, my my mother lived in an apartment building that was basically right next to a big park that had basketball courts and baseball fields, and it was my favorite thing to do is just get home and go right outside and play, which I would do until dinner time. That was my pretty much everyday experience.
So after high school, you went to college. Where did you go to college?
Well, I got like a deferred admission to Cornell. So I went for a semester to a little school called Mount St. Vincent in the Bronx, and then ended up at Cornell, where my brother had just graduated. And um, and I finished at NYU. The last couple of years, I went back to NYU to finish.
And what did you study?
I was a communications major.
And what did you want to be? What did you think you were going to do with that major?
I had no idea. I was a communicator. You know, can very clearly state that, my older brother I looked up to very much, and I followed in his footsteps wherever I could. And that included going to Cornell and being a communications major, even though it was not something that I knew much about. And it wasn't that I wasn't, interested in it because I liked it, but by that time, music was becoming a bigger deal for me. And the road I was starting to separate from my brother a bit, uh, and which was a good thing, but it was also painful in some ways, and as you can imagine.
When did you get started with music and how did that develop for you?
So from what I can remember, in junior high school, I was in the Glee Club. I didn't really want to be. My mother, kind of made me do it. Uh, and when I was singing with this Glee Club, you had like 100 kids in this space, and they all had different, four different parts: the altos and sopranos, the tenors and basses. And they put me in the bass category because I could sing there. Um, but often my mind would start to wander off to the other parts, and I would start singing with them, even from my bass, seat. And my teacher wasn't quite aware of it. I don't think he could tell from kind of his vantage point why there was a soprano voice from a big dude in the back. Um, but I just, that was uh, that was a moment where I realized that I was like, oh, I have a talent for this. I never thought about it before. I was not serious about it. Um, Even when I was taking piano lessons, I was like, I thought it was kind of normal that I could play a little bit of this and that. And I never got far enough in piano that it was, fluent still, to this day. But um, yeah, being in that Glee Club and singing all these different parts was the beginning of me feeling like, oh, I have a talent for music. Eventually, I had a couple of buddies in the hallways of the school who were on free, in free periods, they would pick up a guitar and start playing songs from bands that we all knew. And I would sit down and listen and then, like, can I borrow that for a second and just see what I could do? And of course, I couldn't really play well at the beginning, but I did understand that if I moved my hand up the neck a little bit, the tone was going to be higher. And it was pretty quick that I translated that into actually starting to play, chords. Probably a matter of a couple of months. And then there was a big battle of the bands in high school where I played a couple of cover songs with a friend of mine. And that was a real turning point for me in school because suddenly I wasn't just the quiet jock, um, and to other people. And for me, being on a stage and singing was really new for me. I had done it with the Glee Club, but there's 100 people on stage. It's you could sing a wrong note and nobody would care. This was uh, more noticeable, everything that you were doing. And it went fairly well back then, and I think my popularity stock grew quite a bit from that, and I guess I started to be a little more, social with kids that I wasn't before.
What was your first paid gig?
Hmm. That probably would be at the tail end of high school. There was a band that had hired me as a lead singer. They had about 4 or 5 songs, and there was a little bar on the Upper East Side of Manhattan where a lot of the underage kids would sneak into, well, sneak into, they would have fake IDs. That was kind of a big thing in growing up in New York, and I had one too. And this one bar would let these kids in who were clearly not of age, and they had a little stage in the back. And I don't remember how much I was paid. The gig was probably 30 minutes long, and I'm sure there were some covers on top of the originals, but that was my first time getting paid to play.
And what was your first full-time job?
Hmm. Uh, I'm still waiting for that to happen. I had some. Well, I mean, what do you consider? This is the thing. I'm 46, and I still don't really. I don't think I know the answer to the question of what is a full-time job. 9 to 5 every single weekday. No, I didn't do that. I still have never done that. There were. I was a waiter in the Upper East Side in another restaurant that was during college just to make a little extra money, and that was a roughly 9 to 5 kind of a thing, but it was only 2 or 3 days a week. So that's not really full time. And before I had finished college, I was playing gigs and making a living, starting to make a living at least. So I luckily have not really had a full time job.
But you did do some work as a tutor or teacher or both?
Yeah. So that happened because my father remarried, and the my stepmother is a child psychologist who worked at the time at a specific school, and she knew that there were some kids, mostly maybe 10 or 11 years old, not really advanced math, but there were some kids who were having some trouble in that category, and so she asked if I was interested. And there were a handful of kids over the time that I was, uh, you know, a late teen, that I would go over to their house and do a little math work with them.
So you've had a great career so far. What would you say are some of the highlights of that?
Um, there have been a lot. When I get asked that question, it's often hard for me to recount, where and when were my favorite moments. But I can tell you that there are some venues and some shows that stick out to me that I have not forgotten about. And I've, at this point, playing between 75 and maybe 150 shows a year for 25 years. Um, the fact that it's just there are just some that poke out. I play. There's a venue called the Barns in Vienna, Virginia, that has just a beautiful space. It is a giant barn, beautiful space. And the first time I was asked to play there, uh, was a very memorable experience. Something about the vibe was just perfect that night. Um, I'm sure I'm going to forget plenty of them. Obviously, getting a Grammy nomination was a highlight and an unexpected twist to my working with Judy Collins, which obviously is another highlight. The fact that I got to work with her. As recently as last year with the Indigo Girls, that's a highlight because I remember being a high school kid and learning Closer to Fine, and to be up there singing with them was pretty crazy. And there's been probably maybe 10 acts that I've opened for that I would follow as a younger kid. And I'll put them all up and as far as a highlight. Some I got to know better than others personally, but I've played for 5,000 people before, which for me is pretty big. And I've done some amazing smaller gigs as well. I mean, the 21st Street's one of my favorite venues to go to, and seems like every time I go there, I have an experience that is memorable. So that as well has been a highlight.
How did your collaboration with Judy Collins get started?
So there is a festival, a yearly festival called APAP, and it's like a um, if you play in it, you submit to play in it, you submit an application to play in it, and there are supposedly lots of people in the audience who book acts for their performing arts venues, PACs, that they're called, and so it's a good opportunity to be heard and possibly booked by these places. So there was in 2012 one that I got into, and there was a venue called the Cutting Room in New York, and maybe 200 seat room. And I knew there were a lot of people on the bill. I don't recall whether I knew if Judy was headlining the night, but what I do know is that there were, the event started in the early afternoon, and I was like second or third out of 10 acts, and and it just so happened that while I was playing, she heard me. I guess she was coming in the room, or just arriving at the venue, and she liked it, and she asked her manager to approach me about opening a gig, and then I did that, and it just took off from there.
I assume that's been a pretty fruitful collaboration for you.
I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, and to be perfectly honest, I knew who Judy Collins was. I knew a little bit of the music that she had sung, uh, but my understanding of the entirety of what she has done, as well as my understanding of the folk world, really blossomed once I got to know her. I really, you know, um, I guess I'm the kind of person that I've been enamored with music from an early age, and uh, I tend to focus more on how amazing it is to feel what I feel from music, as opposed to the history of who did what. And it's interesting because I married a musician who kind of is the opposite. I mean, she loves music too, but she is an encyclopedia of who did what. And sometimes when, she names a certain act, I don't, I may not know who they are, or I know very little. And she's like, "What? How do you not know?" So, uh, and I'd put Judy in that category. I don't want to sound, I guess I'm embarrassing myself, but it is what it is. I did not know much about her. Um, but obviously that changed after that experience, um, and we've become friends now. We call each other unrelated to music often.
That's great. I know you're going out on the road with another favorite of ours. You're certainly one of our family's favorites, but another one, Chris Trapper, was
Yeah.
also a performer at our house. How did your tour with him come about?
Uh, we have always talked about the idea of maybe once playing. I remember we were on a bill together with another guy that was like a songwriter in the Round thing maybe 10 years ago. And that I knew of Chris, I knew the Push Stars a little bit. I had seen him play somewhere else, so I knew, how good he was. And, I don't know that he knew me up until that event that we played together. Um, But yeah, we just kind of, I think, always had it in the back burner. Maybe one day we'll do some shows together. And I'm not sure if it was his agent or my agent who reached out to each other, a year ago and said, why don't we try to do something? But that's kind of how it came to be.
So I mentioned that you're a favorite of our family. You've also collaborated with my brother on a song, and my brother David, who's been a previous guest on the podcast. And then you're the only one that I know of that has actually sung a duet with each of my twin daughters. So you sang in my house with Tracy, and you sang with Kathy. So you have that distinction as well. Now, you used to do a thing where you'd invite a woman up to sing Cranberry Lake with you. I don't think you still do that. Is that right?
I haven't done it in a while. To be honest with you, you know, I have trouble, putting gimmicks into shows because I don't feel like I'm a gimmicky kind of guy, and it felt a little put on. But at the same time, I did recognize that the sort of the levity that comes with doing that in a show can be nice, especially if a lot of the music that you're playing is you have to think about what I'm what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and it's not really dance kind of music. So a moment where everybody is smiling and having a fun moment for a few minutes or whatever it is. I think it was really nice to have. I think since then there are songs that I've written that have supplanted that a bit, and maybe it just ran its course. I don't know, but I haven't done it in a while. But I did enjoy some more than others. I
Yeah,
enjoyed.
I assume there was a wide range of talent. Were there any that
No,
really surprised you? It's somebody that was truly surprisingly good.
there have been, yeah. I mean, I probably did that at least a couple hundred times, and
Yeah.
there were. I tell you, the best situations are with people who are excited but can't really sing because it's the audience starts pulling for them in a way that's beautiful, and I think the occasionally there'd be someone who get up and had a really good voice, like basically a professional singer could have been, uh, and it doesn't hit as hard. It's like it's almost I think people wanted it to be wonky, and I guess I did too in some way. I wanted it to be sort of a break from the show as opposed to part of the show. You know what I mean? Uh,
Hmm.
and so, those who could really sing were often not the best guests to have up there, but it's still a good time no matter
Yeah.
what.
What's a hobby or an interest that you enjoy?
I'm heavy into crosswords these days, and I have the Times crossword app, and pretty much every day I'm on there, either doing a crossword or one of those other word games that they have. I find it to be a really nice way to kind of get away from, the whatever I've been tackling. Um, what else? You know, I've had a dog for the last 7 years. I never had a pet growing up. 8 years actually now, and I'm the primary walker. So I really enjoy dogs in general, not just my dog, more than I had in the past. I understand the culture, dog culture, a little more than I used to, and love it. So so that's, I guess, walking the dog is not really a hobby, but it's something that I do enjoy doing for sure.
Now, you years ago had started the project called 52, where you wrote a song every week for a year, and there were subscribers to that. And then more recently, you've been cranking out song, I think, at every other week on Patreon. So, how did 52 get started? And then why don't you contrast for me what was like the 52 versus your current experience?
Sure. I had. just left Columbia Records in 2000 and I want to say seven, I believe, was the last year I was with them. There were two albums that I made, you know, while with them, and when I left, which was somewhat amicable, actually, unusually amicable, um, I I knew that I had a lot of half-written songs that uh, I didn't know what I would do with for a long time, and then I just was like, "All right, let me finish these. Let's see what this leads to." Uh, and I started to, I guess there were a handful that were written in that first week, and again, these weren't starting from scratch, but there were a bunch that were written in that first week, and it made me think about how can I distinguish myself as an independent artist in a way that is unique. I hadn't really heard of a song a week. I knew somebody who tried a song a day, um, but I started doing that because I thought that it would be good for my head to write so much. It would be good to see what I could come up with, just creativity wise. And I just wanted to see where it would lead. So I stuck with it for a full year, and that was, going to be that. And my brother, again, tying him back into things, was at the time my manager. And one of the things that meant was he being pretty web savvy, built me a website that allowed for people to subscribe uh, to a year's worth of songs that would be delivered to them in an email every Monday. So that was a great experience. I recall being more and more into it as the months passed. Um, and I work better under schedules. If I schedule myself, I it's way better than just hoping that something will, pop out of my head. So it was good to have that every Monday, knowing that I had to come up with something. And there were very few weeks that I felt like I really don't want to do this. Like I got nothing. Um, and so and I also at the time my engineering skills were very limited. My understanding of computer programs very limited. Music programs, I mean, I was doing everything GarageBand, which, as you probably know, everybody has if they have a Mac. And I was just playing with the toys and seeing what would happen and what sounded decent to my ears. And so that's the way that project went. And now I'm doing it every 2 weeks, which is more manageable for me, although obviously it's still pretty hard. I have a lot less time to write. I find myself writing a lot, or at least coming up with ideas on those dog walks that I just mentioned. Um, and I think I'm paying a little more attention to dialogue that I have with other people to see if there's like a phrase that somebody just said or that I just said that's um, maybe a good title for something that I can work with. I remember a few weeks ago on a day that I was home with my daughter, and we were looking out the window, and the rain was falling very, very, very gently. And I said it, easy rain. I just said something about easy rain. I don't remember what the statement was, but then as soon as I said it, I'm like, oh, that could be an interesting title. Um, and so, I'm trying to go with that kind of flow. If I hear something somebody says, I'll write about it. And I know a little more about engineering now, a little more, and about I have a better computer music program than I used to pound out these songs, and so it sounds better, I think, what I'm doing, and I'm very much enjoying. I have a better space to create. The space that you see in the background is the attic of my home, uh, which is basically a little music studio. with a couple of kid toys around as well. And before, when I was doing 52, I was in a very, very small bedroom, trying not to make too much noise because I had two roommates who were very close to me, and didn't want to hear, anything too loud. So,
Well, it's been very impressive that what you've been able to do, the quality of the songs, the ability to keep creating them. I applaud you.
thank you.
So my next area we're going to go into are the Fave Five topics of books, food, music, sports, and humor.
Okay.
So do you like to read? And if so, what do you like to read?
I don't read enough. I would say that I tend to like to read fiction and get lost in the story that is just taking me out of my head. Um, you know, Reading about something factual just feels a little. It doesn't excite me as much. So when I will read something, which is rare, it'll usually be, I remember reading Bringing Down the House, the book about I guess that was probably the most recent thing that I finished. The kids who were counting cards out in Vegas, and that was an interesting thing. Maybe because that was a little mathy too. I was curious about it. Um, yeah, I watch. What do I watch? I watch besides my kids. My kid watching Bluey a lot. Um, the great British baking show is on right now a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into that. I was a big fan of Breaking Bad when that was going on, and I just feel like there's so many shows, and there's ones that I'm forgetting right now. That Severance is another one I really liked. And at the end of the day, it is something that I tend to like to do, is to either watch a show with my wife, or if she doesn't want to watch anything, I'll usually put a ball game on and watch that.
Do you have an author or a book or a show that you'd like to recommend?
Uh, let's see. Catastrophe is a show that I loved. I believe that's a show that I connected very much with the humor in that show. So Catastrophe.
What do you like to eat?
What do I not like to eat is the um, I tend to, well, I have to watch some of what I eat because um, I have a not a particularly dangerous condition at least at this point in my life, but basically I have to watch for eating too much leafy green stuff. So vitamin K is like not the best thing for me to eat. So I don't eat a lot of salad, unfortunately. I eat a lot of I drink a lot of ginger juice because it's supposed to have the opposite effect that
Mhm.
you know. But as far as things that I love, avocado, olives, goat cheese, I'm kind of in that world, and I like fish a lot. And I have reconnected with French fries since my daughter's been born. There were decades that went by that I didn't eat French fries, and now it's like I what happens is she orders them, and there's too many on the plate, and I feel like the only way to figure out the situation is to eat some of them so that she doesn't eat all of them. So now I eat fries almost every day, which is not good.
Does she like ketchup with her fries?
She does. Also something that I kind of stopped eating when I was 15, but you know, not anymore.
So if we were to share a meal together, is there a restaurant we would visit? Like you probably have a lot of history in New York, but now you're in Boston. Are there restaurants in either of those cities that you would take me to?
Yeah, I've been up in Massachusetts for 7, 8 years now, and uh, enough so that we've been to a few restaurants that really got my attention. There's one called Ivan's in Boston that I was pretty blown away with. My wife has taken me to a bunch of different ones in Boston, in the North End, where it's the Italian. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've been up here, but
Yeah.
really, kind of a thing, and it's really pretty incredible, some of the restaurants. So we tend to go out for Italian, um, and that's the area. No specific restaurant, name comes to mind up there, but it's hard to go wrong.
Right. That's right. I used to go out to Boston regularly for work, and then
Okay.
I would stop in the North End and then head out to where we were meeting. What about New York? Any restaurants that you remember liking a lot there?
I do, but now to remember their names can be difficult. Baltazar was a great place that for my early 20s I lived in Soho, and very close to that restaurant, so I would go there. And at the time, of course, I was also I had much less. Uh, I didn't have to come up with the amount of money every month that I have to now, so I could afford to go and go down to Baltazar more often than I probably should have, but that was one that I loved.
Now, as a musician, it may be hard to answer this next one, but I like to ask my guests about a favorite song or musician or concert or album. Are there some that come to mind for you?
I would say, as far as an album, I would put Peter Gabriel's "So" at the top of that list, probably because there's only a handful of albums that I think I could sing the entire thing right now. If you started playing it, I could, every word. Uh, and for me, and this is another thing we didn't really touch upon yet, but um, my my desire to listen to music early on was only because of the music. It was not about lyrics. And I was drawn to the chord changes and the melody. I didn't even think twice about the lyrics, really, until I was a late teenager. Um, and so, what was my point about this?
We're talking about the favorite album. So,
Yeah, I think I started listening more to, even though it was from 1986, I think. I believe I started listening to that a lot towards the tail end of college, and it's still, I still put it on, um, and I know every word, so that would be my choice.
is there a favorite song that you like to sing of your own?
Yeah, I there's a bunch that I like to sing. Um, I think there are some that I like to sing because they're more challenging, and some that I like to sing because I feel like they're better songs than other songs. Less would be up there as the latter of that. I just feel like that's one of the best things I've done. Um, and so I do enjoy singing that, and that's one that doesn't really challenge me vocally, but still I want to sing, quite a bit. As far as ones that challenge me more vocally, there's an old song of mine called the Swan Song that was hard to sing and play, and I when I've played it live, just to give you one example, I think when I finish a song like that and I feel like I've done a good job, I let out quite a big sigh because I feel like it's almost like an accomplishment that I was able to play it and sing it as well as I just did. Because those are, songs like that are a little harder with the intricate guitar rhythm on top of, going into very high and very low register stuff in one song.
What was the first record that you bought?
Hmm. First record I bought was probably, uh, hmm, gosh, it was probably a Guster album, and I can't remember the name of it, but I can tell you the reason why that is because I went to see Guster. It was the first show that I had, first big show that I had ever been to in ninth grade, I believe. So I would have been 14 or 15. Um, and yeah, that band I connected with, and so I I remember buying this one album, but I couldn't I couldn't tell you what it's called. I could probably sing a couple of songs.
What's the most recent concert or show that you attended?
Uh, the most recent was watching my wife sing with Christopher Cross in Boston about a month ago. It was Christopher Cross, Men at Work, and Toto.
Wow.
They just finished their country long, countrywide tour. I took my kid. She had never seen, well, she hadn't seen those acts all together. She had seen her mom on stage with, a big names before, but this was a little more unique. She got to meet, the bands, all the people from the bands, and so did I. Um, Actually, Chris Trapper was there too because he's good friends with Colin Hay, the lead singer of Men at Work. And so it was a great night. We all connected, and obviously to see Toto do their thing is especially again coming from this place that music. I know I said it at first; it meant more to me than the lyrics did. I would still put it as slightly ahead of lyrical content in my brain, at least. And Toto is a good example of a band that I don't know what the lyrics. I don't know what they're talking about. It's Serengeti and Rains of. It's just okay. But what I do know is that I light up when I hear that chorus. And there's something about the musicianship, the drumming, that's just like second to none. So that's what I connect with that band.
What'd your daughter think of seeing her mom perform?
She loves it. She loves seeing both of us.
Yeah.
She hasn't really seen me do a lot of. Um, she's only seen me do smaller events, so hopefully that'll change. But yeah, it's great, and she's very much into the lifestyle of. She loves singing. You know, she wants to sing for us all the time in the house. And it's great.
So do you see a musical future for her?
I do. I
And
do.
are you okay with that?
I am. I am. It's actually kind of comforting. I don't know how other people would answer this question, but I have some fears about where we're headed with the AI and all that, and I think about what my kid's going to do and if it's going to connect with, there's going to be human to human interaction that's powerful, and I can't think of many other, things that would be on the level of performing. I don't think people want to see robots perform. And although they clearly can write songs these days,
Mhm.
there's the human element, I think, is something that people want to see when they watch a performance. And so I'm glad that my daughter's curious about it and clearly has already, at 6 years old, some talent for it.
What sports do you like to watch?
Uh, Baseball has always been my favorite. Um, and I still occasionally play.
Hmm.
This year is the first year in probably the last 15 or 20 years that I did not join the adult, amateur league. I just took a year off from it, but I miss it. But watching the game and understanding the game, it's thrilling. I know some people find baseball kind of boring, but I love it. I like watching football. I like watching basketball, especially towards the end of the games. Um, and even hockey, which I've never played a lick of. I enjoy watching, and there's very few sports that I can point to and say I don't really want to watch that. Although I will put golf on that list. I've never really enjoyed watching golf on TV. I do like playing it, but there's something about watching on TV that I find to be, unappealing.
And you were a pretty good baseball player. What was your position?
That's changed a bit over time, but I grew up as a first baseman. In high school, I started to pitch more. I played some outfield. There was another kid who was a really good first baseman, so and he only played there, so they put him there. And then since then, yeah, it's kind of a mix of first base and outfield, and I like to move around. I like that I'm kind of a jack of all trades, as much as a lefty can be in baseball.
um, what teams? If you're a baseball fan, who's your team?
I Yankees have always been my team for more of sort of this childhood obsession reason than anything else. And the athlete that I admired the most growing up was Don Mattingly. And I just, everything about my playing baseball, I was trying to emulate him. Um, and Yeah, so I grew up a Mattingly fan even more than a Yankee fan. The Yankees in the 80s and early 90s were not a very good team, but he was a special player and kept me very excited about watching the games. Um, so yeah, he would be the main reason for liking the Yankees. And then in football, I have a weird answer for that, but my brother and I, again, I like to follow in his footsteps. And when we were young, he was a big Jet fan. But for whatever reason, I just didn't want to uh, like the same team as him. But there was something about the color green that I've always loved. So I looked for another green team, and there was this guy who could run around and throw a ball, 100 yards, named Randall Cunningham in Philadelphia, and I suddenly found myself to be an Eagles fan, which if you know football and you know football fans, there's a lot of grief given to Eagles fans for being too uh, inhumane or whatever you want to say, but
Right.
I don't feel like I fit well with the rest of the Eagles fans, but I do like to follow that team.
What about you have a basketball team you like?
And the Knicks have always been, I've had no problem liking them. And grew up with Patrick Ewing, being the center of everything, and unfortunately haven't seen them win a championship in my life, but maybe one day.
What what about living in Boston? Are you still a New York fan, or do you find any interest in the local teams?
It's hard. I find it difficult to connect with, the guys that I play baseball with up here, they're all Boston
Yeah,
guys. And
yeah,
so it feels a little weird to
yeah.
be, I feel like a fish out of water. Even just throwing on my Yankee hat feels a little odd. Um, but it is what it is.
Do you have a favorite sports memory?
My favorite sports memory would probably being watching Don Mattingly hit a home run in the playoffs. And the reason I say that is because he never made the playoffs except for one season, which was his last season. There was a strike shortened year that they were in first place. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
Sure.
where they were destined for glory, and then they cut the season short, so he didn't get to go. And then he had this one series against the Seattle Mariners where he hit a home run, and I was in the stadium when it happened, and I went crazy. It was just such a surreal thing to watch your hero finally get to that spot and come up big. And unfortunately, they didn't win the series, and he never won a World Series. But he did. He did hit a big. He had a big moment in a big game, and it made me think of that Field of Dreams movie, and
Yeah.
that kind of feeling of this. very human feeling. Just because I didn't win something, it doesn't mean I didn't have a real moment with it. I connected with that. I suppose I connect with it in my own career too. There's been a lot of beautiful things that have happened, and I know that I'm not a household name, but it's still powerful. And I think it was to him too to hit that home run in a big, in a
Yeah.
big spot.
Well, I share with you, I lived in New Jersey for 6 years and I was a fan of the local teams. I did get to see the Knicks win two championships. That's before your time, but they haven't won one in a while. Um, I was a fan of both the Yankees and the Mets. I went to see the Yankees play a bunch in 1968 when they weren't good, but it was Mickey Mantle's last year. I got to see him at a home run at Yankee Stadium, so that
Wow.
was that was a treat. And then the Miracle Mets. I was a fan of the Miracle Mets in '69, and it's still unbelievable that they won the World Series.
Right.
It's basically a lineup of very few names that anyone remembers, but I could name the entire roster to show you what kind of a fan I was. So, in any case, but then I moved to St. Louis, and eventually my New York fandom wore off. I
Well,
switched
being in St.
allegiance.
Louis, that's a good baseball town, so
That's
I
a
can.
great baseball town. And then I moved from St. Louis to Detroit. And it's interesting, the 1968 World Series is remembered very differently in those two cities. In St. Louis, it's viewed as a tragic failure. They were up 3 games to 1 and lost. And in Detroit, it's remembered fondly as a great year where they came back from down 3-1 to win a game 7. So, anyway, that's interesting to have been a part of both sports
Sure,
communities.
sure.
Switching to comedy, do you have a favorite comedian or comedy film or TV show or book?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I tend to I like Sarah Silverman a lot. I like, you know, comedians that push the envelope a little bit more than others. I tend to, although I will say, my wife and I went to see Jerry Seinfeld do a thing a couple of years ago, and his whole thing is to not really go in that direction and keep it clean, and he finds a way to still really connect very well without that. So I really appreciated that. But I've been a Chappelle fan. I've been a big Eddie Murphy fan, Jim Carrey. Um, I like physical humor a lot. Um, yeah, those are I guess, some of the ones that I connect with.
Who's the best at making you laugh, and who are you able to crack up?
My my kid is probably the one that I can crack up the most. The best at making me laugh. Oh gosh. Uh, let's go with Chappelle. Let's go with Chappelle. There's something about watching him that, yeah, does it for me.
Well, it's a time where I'm going to ask you to tell a story. You can pick a story of any kind, but one you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Hmm. Maybe I could just talk about how I didn't have a story in mind, but I think I've been thinking a lot about the transition of moving up here and uh, how drastically different your life can look, a few years apart. And even though I'm still doing what I do, and some of it has changed a bit, but in large part it's still, I'm still doing shows, and that's my bread and butter, and I love doing them and all that. Um, Being a dad and being in the suburbs, and being, having a dog and having this whole family unit and priorities changing, it all kind of happened and hit me at once that things were about to change as soon as we got to this house that we rented up here. And I wrote a song about it called Hatherley. a few years ago because the house is on Hatherley Road next to this beach, and every day I would go out and the dog would run to the beach, and it was just this like almost like a pause in my life where all that had happened before the 40 years before, it was now just really much, very much in the past. It felt like everything was really shifting. And I've traveled so much, but I never got that feeling. I always like, I'm going to come home to the hustle of New York and get back to my apartment and all that. And it's just amazing how if you have a change of scenery and grow your family a little bit, that things really start to shift in your mind, and you realize a little more about the kinds of lifestyle you want to have. And I think I realized coming up here and in that moment of arriving at that house that I need that. I need that quiet. I need that peace. I need that focus on my family uh, because I feel like um, New York was moving so fast that I wasn't processing it, and I feel like I can process a lot more up here. So I don't know if that's much of a story, but I'll just it all has to do with this house and this move and things changing for the better.
Okay, well, I'll ask you a quick story then. How did you meet your wife?
uh, that would have been a better one, right? We were invited to, so there was this friend that I had named Alex Berger, and Alex is a musician who was British, but he was living in New York, and he was doing this thing every year where he would invite a couple of New York musicians back to England to do a little tour, little rooms, basically a show every night for a week, stay in the house that he grew up in. And I thought it was great. And he invited me. And originally it was supposed to be me and a performer named Sierra Noble. And Sierra backed out. And Chrissy Poland, the name Chrissy Poland became, she became the person that was going to come as well. Uh, and and so oh, I'm losing it. I'm losing my my train of thought again. But it was London where I first met her. Um, I remember vividly, uh, you know, traveling overnight and being very groggy, but meeting her and immediately connecting on music and immediately feeling, a sense of us, our personalities gelling in an interesting way to me. I felt she was really down to earth. I was looking for that in a human being, and so yeah, that's how we met. It was in London, but we lived in New York about a mile from each other, and we didn't know each other. But this guy Alex brought us out to do this tour, and that's where I actually met her. And then we came back from that tour, and suddenly, yeah, we're neighbors. So let's see where this goes.
Great. Well, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of stories that are about what I mentioned earlier that you've actually sung duets with both of my daughters. The first one was at our house concert, which was in 2011.
Mhm.
And for that concert, my daughter Tracy was actually with us at that time. She was running her own interior design business out of our basement. But she, as I mentioned, had become a big fan of yours, so she was quite excited. I remember her typing in on social media, she says, "I can't believe that Ari Hest is warming up on our piano in our living room." But before that, I had asked her if she was going to want to sing Cranberry Lake with you, and you were here, and she says, "No, I don't really like singing in public." She had been in the chorus, the choir in high school, but hadn't had the same level of achievement in singing that her twin sister Kathy had had. So she said, "No, I'll pass on that." I said, "Well, it's an opportunity. You love Ari Hest. He's going to be here. Why not?" "No, no, I don't want to do it." "Okay, I understand." So that I went to see you at the Ark a few nights before you were playing here,
Mhm.
and another woman there who actually was a professional singer named Kate had sung with you that night. And after the show was when I first met you. I came up and talked to you after the show. And then later, I got a note from Kate, and she said, "Oh, I talked to Ari after the show. I wasn't happy with how I had sung the duet, and I wanted another chance. And he mentioned you were having your house concert, so I wonder if I'd come out and sing again." I said, "Well, all right, let me check." And so I went downstairs to talk to Tracy, and I said, "Well, Tracy, you don't have to sing the duet with Ari. Kate's going to come sing it." And Tracy said, "I'll sing it." So I wrote back to Kate. I said, "You're still welcome to come, but
Can't sing it.
my daughter's going to sing." So that was the first time you sang with Tracy, and that was more an example of, you said, of somebody who wasn't as polished as a singer, but that was really trying her best, and the audience appreciated that. And then the second time was when Tracy got married in 2017. I asked you if you would come out and sing as a surprise performer, and this ended up being one of the better things I've done as a dad, because Tracy and her husband Matt were both big fans, and Matt knew how to play some of your songs on his guitar. They were both fans. In fact, one time they had come to see you at the Ark when you were opening for Suzanne Vega, and then as soon as you were done playing, they left. Like they weren't going to stay for the main show. They had seen what they wanted to see. But in any case, I asked you if you'd come out. You agreed to that, which was great. We flew you in as a surprise. And then on the day of the show, we told you, stay out of sight because it's a surprise. We don't want anybody to see you. So we were hanging around the Four Seasons Hotel in Santa Barbara, and there was a room where the groomsmen were hanging out before the event, and I was in there. And then one point, my son Roger came in and he said, "Hey, I think Ari Hess is sitting right outside the room." I said, "No, I don't think so." I opened up the door, and there you were. I said, "Ari, you got to go. You got to go hide better." So,
Sorry
so
about
you
that.
did. You went to the bar and disappeared. But then later on, when I was telling that same story about Tracy and as the toast I was giving her, then I said, "And now I'd like to bring out Grammy nominee Ari Hest." And we have pictures of the faces of Tracy and Matt at that moment, and their eyes were as wide as can be. It was like the greatest surprise you could possibly orchestrate. They were so happy. And then at that event, you sang a couple of songs, and the second one was Cranberry Lake, and Kathy, who's a more accomplished singer, sang that duet with you. So
Right.
those were great, great memories that we have.
That's amazing. Wow. I didn't know that. I blocked out that whole thing where you saw me, too early and told me to take a hike.
Matt later told me that he had seen a guitar sitting in the reception area, but he said he didn't think anything. He didn't think anything of it
I mean, it
until
probably
later.
said
He goes,
Hest
"Oh yeah,
on.
that's why the guitar." Well, at any rate, I want to wrap up by asking you to tell us a little about how someone who wants to follow you. I mentioned earlier about doing a song on Patreon. If someone wants to support you on Patreon, how do they go about doing that?
Patreon.com/, Ari Hest, which is Arihest. And the page explains, how you can support what I do and how you can listen to these songs. And it is the best way if you do want to support my career, my making music. That's the best way to do it these days, is to check out these songs. And yeah, thank you in advance. Thank you.
And if they want to find out where to see you and get your music, where should they go for that?
That's just arihest.com. That'll
Okay.
have all the tour dates.
And one last question for you. I noticed that the name of your business is Two Cardinals. Where did that name come from?
That is actually the old business that Chrissy and I used to have. We used to have a business called Two Cardinals, and that really came from, we both had a kind of a connection to nature in that way, that we felt like, old family members who had passed were kind of coming back to us in the form of cardinals. So we decided to name our business after it.
Okay. Well, Ari, thanks a lot for joining today. It's been a pleasure having you as a
Thank you
guest.
for having me, Sam.
It's
Thank you.
been wonderful following your career since 2008, and I continue to look forward to seeing you come back regularly to the area.
I so appreciate it. Thank you for all the questions and of course being in my corner.